everybody, I am Hillary Harrison with Durham Parks and Recreation. I work in the Outdoor Recreation and City Lakes unit, and in our unit we do environmental education, adventure programs. We look over the city lakes, Lake Mickey and Little River Lake, and we just do all sorts of things in the outdoors. So I'm here today to tell you a little bit about birding, specifically birding by ear, because believe it or not, you can actually identify quite a few bird species just by using your ears. So the way that I got into birding in the first place was I actually worked for the National Park Service for about 10 years. And in that time, I worked at a site for quite a time that had a really nice place to look at birds. And I could see all of the different shorebirds that were coming in throughout the year, but there was quite a few birds that I couldn't really see because they were hiding in the marsh. So I had to learn to figure out how to identify those birds that I knew were out there just by using my ears. So we're out here today at West Point on the Eno Environmental Education Pavilion. Now this pavilion, it oversees a beautiful meadow down below, and we have quite a few trails nearby that are really great for going birding. So the pavilion is a really wonderful place because it oversees that meadow down below. There's lots of birds that come down into that meadow to sit on the grasses and to feed on the bugs that are down in the meadow. The trails are great nearby because we have a really great canopy of trees. We have lots of low-lying bushes, and we tend to see and hear a lot of different bird species while we're out at the Environmental Education Pavilion. So today I thought that I would talk to you about some of the common species that we see out here at the Environmental Education Pavilion. And while we go through these species, a few of them, I'll give you some of the calls phonetically, which means that basically I'm going to spell out the actual sounds that the bird is going to make. So for example, one of the common birds that we commonly hear and see at the Environmental Education Pavilion is the Carolina wren. The Carolina wren is a small little bird that you see pretty much year round. It's about the size of the palm of your hand. And it's a little cute little bird, and the bird says, witchity, 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 which I imagine now that you hear that, you may have heard that around your home or maybe in the woods. So if you're out walking on the trails or sitting nearby a bird feeder, you might hear witchity, witchity, witchity from a Carolina wren. So the next bird that I want to talk about is the eastern towhee. Now the eastern towhee you can see year round, but they will come out more often when the weather gets a little bit colder. So they tend to spend a lot of time foraging on the ground near bird feeders, and they like to sit in bushes, kind of in the bottom of the forest. So the sound that the eastern towhee makes, and this is one of my favorites because it's really easy to remember, is drink your tea. So in the wintertime, when you see an eastern towhee, or when you hear an eastern towhee and you hear drink your tea, that's what you get. You got an eastern towhee. All right, so our next bird is going to be a mourning dove. Now people think it's mourning dove like the morning, like the sun's coming up, but it's actually mourning like a sad dove. And they do kind of sound a little bit sad and melancholy. So mourning doves you typically can hear in the morning. Sometimes you will hear them in the evenings. But they're the ones that are out in the woods going, ooh, 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 ooh. So lots of folks think that they may be an owl, but they actually are a dove. It's kind of a pretty large sized dove that sits on the ground, and it says, ooh, 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 ooh. So our last two birds are going to be two birds that you may hear during the day, but you are more likely going to hear them at night, and that's because they are nocturnal birds. So these two birds are two owls that are fairly common to our area. So the first one is the barred owl, and this is a pretty common owl. It's pretty large, so a lot of people might see them hanging out up in a tree, but they have a very, very unique call, and it's pretty fun to think about. So what the barred owl says is, who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? So again, that's who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? So they have that kind of like ah at the end. And then the very last one is a screech owl. Now, I'm not very good at doing the sound of a screech owl because I am in fact not a horse, but if you've ever heard a horse neigh, that is the sound that a screech owl makes. So they kind of make like a sound. It's a little jarring when you hear it for the first time, but it's kind of fun to know. And a screech owl is actually a really small owl. They're about the size of your hand if you have all of your fingers stretched out. They're a pretty small owl, and they sound like a horse going ee. So when you're out exploring outdoors and you want to go birding by ear, some things to think about are you may want to go on a day where it has pretty good weather and there's not rain. So we're out here on a rainy day, and as you might be able to tell, it's a little bit kind of, the rain kind of drowns out the sound, but we are hearing some birds out here, believe it or not. What's a really good time to go if it is a rainy day is right after the rain stops, all of the birds come out. So one of the things that a lot of birds do, especially birds that like to eat worms, is when it rains and it gets all muddy, the worms get pushed up out of the ground, and lots of birds love to come out and eat all of those yummy worms. So right after a rainstorm, right after a thunderstorm in the summertime is a great time to listen for birds. Also, first thing in the morning is a great time for birds. When the sun first comes up, that's when they're awake and they're ready to go, and they're making lots of noise out there. So a couple of things to think about when you're just walking through the woods, or if you're in a stationary area, is really try to hone in on those senses. And you really want to try and pinpoint where that noise is coming from. Now the bird might move places, so you got to keep an ear out for that. But that is something, is that you really want to try and hone in on that sense of hearing and really try to figure out where that sound is coming from. Also recognize that there might be multiple birds that are chirping at one time. So there are some really great birding apps out there. eBird is a really great one, and Merlin Bird ID is also a really great one. Those are two that have sound clips associated with the birds when you're looking at the app, so that you can go through and you can listen to the different bird sounds so that you can get more familiar with them over time. Highly recommend those two. So a couple of good places to think about to go birding in this area is, of course, West Point on the Eno. West Point on the Eno Environmental Education Pavilion, or on the opposite side of the park where the mill is. We have some really great trails here in this park. Lots of great birds to go here while you're out walking around on the trails. Also, any of the state parks are really great places to go. Eno River State Park is wonderful, as well as Falls Lakes State Recreation Area. They've got some really great birds there as well. But really, truly, any of the city parks within Durham, I have found some really great luck hearing and seeing lots of different birds out there. So I highly recommend to check out a lot of our city parks. You'd be surprised at what you can find within just the city of Durham. So before I go today, I just want to share with you a couple of fun programs that our unit does. We are right now kind of limited on the programs that we're offering, but we do have some really cool ones that are safe for your family, and we hope that you'll join us. So one is our Explore Nature Drop-In Hours program. This program takes place at the Environmental Education Pavilion. It's family friendly and very safe. Folks can come out. You do need to pre-register for all programs, but you can come out and see us. We have some activities to do out in the pavilion and in the meadow below, and then we send you out on a fun hike to go and explore the nearby trails. Another fun program that we're doing right now is our Flashlight Scavenger Hunt. So the Flashlight Scavenger Hunt is when you come out to the park, we have a set of clues for you. You go out with your flashlights and you follow the clues to find a hidden animal. Not a real animal, it's a printout of an animal. Don't be afraid. But you can find a hidden animal in different stations throughout the park, which is a really, really fun time. We hope to offer more in the spring and definitely intend to, so we hope that you'll join us and spend some time outdoors in your Durham City Parks.